Hey, you have Patrick Findaro here, managing partner at Visa Franchise. Excited to have on Joaquin Rosales, an immigration attorney also based here in Miami, Florida. He does all different types of visas, principally focused on special ability, employment, investor visas. Today's live stream, though, we're going to focus principally on the EB2 NIW visa, what that's all about, the process, how Visa Franchise can help you together with Joaquin obtain the green card through the EB2 NIW. Joaquin, thanks so much for joining.
No, thank you for having me, Patrick. I appreciate your time and everybody's time joining us today.
So tell me, when did you start getting involved in the EB2 NIW space? Because it's starting to blow up in the last 6 months, 12 months, but I know you've been doing it for longer than that. How did you, what was your first case? How long ago was that? And how did you start scaling up your practice with NIW?
I started, have almost a decade of experience in immigration. I started mostly in removal proceedings in court. And then I started pivoting towards these, what we call niche visas. Because we try to, work with people, in a more sort of personalized basis, right? So instead of doing more volume, we decided to sort of talk and start working with people were interested in these visas. And we started to find out that not many people knew of different options, right? Everybody knows that you can get to the States if you have a family member. A lot of people know about the investor visa, the E2 or the EB5 more than anything. And they think that's it, pretty much, the student visa. So we started to find out that, if you're able to educate people on all these different visas, then they have a great possibility to apply for them because they're qualified for it and they had no idea about these visas. So we started pivoting towards the EB1 and EB2 NIW, sort of educating the public about it, and then started to get a huge and all sorts of places. A lot of the places that we get are typically from South America, although we work from, with people from across the world. But it's been a very successful tool for people to come here in the United States that, typically don't have family members or any of the other options, or even perhaps, the funds to do an investment visa like the EB5, which we know is exorbitant amount of money.
$800K. It's a lot of money, and it takes like 50 months to process that visa.
So we found out that, these niche visas are extremely useful, and they're great tools to bring in people who are talented. And obviously what the purpose of the visa is to bring in people who are going to help, the United States. It's in the interest of the United States to bring these type of people, and they're going to be a great part of society, aiding the society in so many different levels. And that's what we're trying to focus on mostly.
And before we dive into the meat of the EB2 NIW, I understand there's a few special ability, high professional type visas, the O1, EB1A, and then EB2 NIW. At a high level, could you just talk a little bit about the differences between those visas?
Sure. So I always like to, explain it. I mean, you got to look at it as steps, right? So obviously EB1 is sort of like the Mercedes-Benz or the Rolls-Royce, right, of the visas. And I mean, the letter of the law says this is for people who have extraordinary abilities, right? Then you have the EB2, right, which is exceptional abilities, right? But it has to be in the national interest. Then you have EB3, which is, unskilled, skilled other workers, sort of like, sort of lower positions. In terms of the O1, I like to compare the O1 to sort of like, I don't like to say that's less hard, because nothing is a little bit less hard in immigration, but it's not as difficult as the EB1, but it's a temporary visa, right? And it's also a really good jump off to also go to eventually either an EB1 or an EB2, right? You can come in with an O1 visa. They have what they're looking at, and we'll go through, the criteria that they typically are looking at or they require. And this is pretty much the same thing, but the level of scrutiny is not as high when it comes to the O1 in comparison to the EB1, right?
Because they're not getting a green card at the end of the day.
Exactly, you're not getting a green card. But we found out that it's a great strategy if perhaps a candidate, we think that the candidate might be right there. We look at profiles and we try to, make sure that we're not picking profiles that are not going to be approved, right? That's not the point of this whole process, right? So when we feel like they're kind of sort of 50-50 or a little bit less than 50%, we suggest that they do the O1, because once you're in here and you have the ability to prove yourself, right? And then once you prove yourself in here, let's say you have a business or in the arts or finance or whatever it may be, you're able to have a sort of a evidentiary history that will fortify your application for a green card in the future. So it's a really good tool that we utilized before. And I think people that, perhaps might not be quite there for, say, an EB1 or an EB2 NIW, it's a good stepping stone, to
so
get
either
there.
O1, and then I've also seen E2, if it's
Yeah,
for that
for sure.
more type of entrepreneurial
side. Yeah. You show that, you've had, your E2, your business, you've grown your business, you're employing Americans or residents, which is the purpose of the visa. And then with that history, it's a lot easier to make an argument that, it's in the interest of the United States, right, to have a person like you with your entrepreneurial drive in order to, stimulate the economy, create more jobs, which is the point of all these visas are here, right?
And then on the O1, so it's essentially a talent visa, and they're going to look at your abilities. For the EB2, it's based on the proposed endeavor, what you're going to be doing in the U.S. And visa franchise, we can help open the LLC, get the business bank account, business plan, get all that going, help with the idea generation of the proposed endeavor. But on the requirement side, say you don't have an advanced degree, you don't even have a bachelor's degree, are the requirements kind of similar to meet that ability requirement of the EB2 NIW as is the O1, or does it really vary?
So the O1, well, first off, the difference on a major difference is that, for example, with the EB1 and the EB2, you can do a self-petition, right? So when it comes to the O1, you need someone to sponsor you, depending on what you're doing. It's which one, O1 in particular. Some O1s, you only need sort of like an agent. There's agencies out there that sort of like give you the opportunity, they'll sponsor you, right? But they give you the opportunity to do sort of like work with different companies or different projects, but you still need that sponsor, right? In contrast with the EB1 or the EB2, you're just simply petitioning yourself. You're telling the government, look, I have, the talents, I have the capabilities that you're looking for. You want me to be there, give me a green card, and let me make your country a better place, right? So, but in terms of the criteria, it's very similar. They're looking at a lot of different criteria that we'll go over right now in terms of the EB2 NIW that is utilized as well for the O1, but just to a lesser degree, right? It's not, as intense as the EB2, like we said, or EB1, because you're not getting a residency, right? But you're getting a temporary visa, and it's a great stepping stone to go to the next ones.
So it'd be great to review the first major requirement,
Sure.
the person, not the proposed endeavor. So
sure.
Walk us through the check mark. It's if you have an advanced degree, great, check. But if not.
So with the EB2 NIW, having an advanced degree, when we say that, we're talking about a master's degree, a doctorate, right? Or a bachelor's degree plus 5 years experience in your field, right? So that's sort of like the bottom basic line. That doesn't mean that because you have a doctorate, you're going to be approved. It means that if you have that bottom line, you're able to do this application, right? Because you also have to prove, right, that you meet certain criteria, at least 3 criteria of the 6 criteria they look at least for the EB2 NIW, right? So those are the basic things that you need at a basic level to start the process, right? Then you're looking at different criteria that you need to meet at a minimum 3 of them, right? Where you have to show, for example, that you have, we utilize a lot of letters of recommendation from people that have worked with you, people that, were maybe, sort of superiors in your job, right? You need 10 years of experience, right? In not one particular job, but in your industry. And we demonstrate that through letters of recommendation of people who have worked with you in projects that can, point out to the great things that you did in a certain project, in a certain company, how much you grew the company, how much more money, you were able to in revenue you were able to bring in when you were working with the company, for example. So that's one of the criteria that we look at. The other criteria that we look at is how much money you're making, right? So if you have a job in your particular country, right, and you're making a substantial amount higher than any other person in your profession, right, then that shows that you are of value, right? So that's something that's really important as well, to bring about if that's the case in your profile, right? A license to practice whatever profession you may have is also another criteria that they look at. Very important. Also, if you are a member of like a professional association, right? So let me give you an example. I'm an attorney. I'm an immigration attorney here. AILA, the American Immigration Lawyers Association, but I have to pay for it, right? I have to be an attorney and I just got to pay for it. And that's it, right? We're not really looking for that in here. You can't just really pay to play. You have to, but when we're trying to prove
there should be some sort of like selective nature to it.
It has to be a little bit selective. They either picked you, or there's got to be a application process. It can't just be like, okay, I'm paying for this and then it's over, right? Also recognition of your achievements or contributions to the field, right, by the peers or government entities or business organizations. So that typically comes in the forms of, if you've implemented some methodologies, for example, in a huge, say, company, Fortune 500 company or a multinational company, and those methodologies are now being utilized, in other places, in other subsidiaries, right, across the world, then that shows that what you've done has contributed to the value of what you're doing, right? So it's really important to sort of show that. A lot of people, are a little shy. I don't know if I can, talk to people, and I tell them, like, don't be shy. You don't lose anything by just asking, right? And we help out a lot in sort of formatting, the letters, and helping, the people who are going to be sort of signing off on these letters have like a good understanding of what we're looking for, right? What they need to explain to sort of highlight how important this person was in project A, B, C, or D, or the company overall. So, and then you have what it's called, I call it a catch-all. It's like comparable evidence, right? So that basically is, if you've been in the media, is really good, right? If you've been in magazines like Entrepreneur Magazine, for example, or science technology magazines, if you have articles, and this criteria actually are part of the EB1 criteria, but having it in the EB2 NIW, fortifies your application. So if you have publications, academic publications, right, and you have people who are utilizing those publications and quoting you and citing you, that shows to immigration that what you do is important, right? That you are you have exceptional abilities, and that you are in the interest of the United States, right? So we get a lot of questions as to, I heard it's only arts and math, and I'll tell you, we've done all sorts of professions, right? Obviously, if you're in the finance and the technology, maybe perhaps we've done sort of professions that help out the national defense, and that could come in all sorts of ways. Maybe
AI. I mean, there's some industries that I'm sure it's just going to be easier process to get approved with.
Oh yeah, for sure. Now we're moving towards, especially in this administration, they're pushing green technology, sort of renewable. Farming and vertical farming, and we've done those as well. I mean, just so long as you're able to convince the government that it's in the interest of the government to have a person like you, it's our job. And also, it's extremely important to have a professional plan or a business plan, right, to ride along, because that gives the agents, we have to treat them like kids, right? It gives them a very clear picture, right, of how good this.
You can't expect them to know about every, especially as you get deep into AI or renewable energy.
Exactly. Like, what do I know about AI or vertical farming or anything like that, right? So it's important to have a professional plan or a business plan that shows that. I use this example a lot. Excuse me. It's not to denigrate, say, any profession, but I use this example to try to drive through the point of the difference between the EB2 NIW and say the EB1. So EB1, we already said it's a higher level, right? Extraordinary. EB2, exceptional abilities, right? But the difference is it's the national importance. So for example, if a client comes up to me and says, Joaquin, I have been a painter for 30 years. I've been recognized all across the world. I'm one of the best painters. You know, my exhibitions are everywhere. Amazing, right? You most likely would get approved for an EB1. But if we apply for an EB2 NIW, it's probably going to be really tough to try to convince an agent that a painter, although an amazing profession and you've been extremely successful, is going to be in the interest of the United States, right? So I like to drive that point in so people can understand that it's important that even though the EB2 is sort of lower than the EB1, sometimes it might be a little bit more difficult because you have to prove that it is in the national interest of the United States, right? So I think it's a good example to demonstrate what we're looking for in the EB2 NIW.
Your job's matchmaking. So, you know, we were saying visa franchise, it's a specific opportunity, whether it's a franchise or your own venture that we can support with.
For sure.
And then you're the expert matchmaking exactly what visa category it's going to be.
That's why, look, and I'm telling you, Patrick, it's been in the past couple of years, especially I want to say 2 years, we have seen an increase of RFEs, which is requests for evidence pertaining to these visas. And I can't even tell you how much easier it makes my life and obviously my client's life to have a professional plan, to have a business plan that puts everything and ties everything together. It makes it easier for the agent to understand it. And then we've seen obviously a much better result when we have professional plans and business plans that, you know, visa franchise can provide for the clients, as well as maybe compatible potential employers. That's important. Even though you're doing a self-petition, it's really good to say, hey, I got 3-4 companies that are really interested in my profile. I just need to be able to get in here legally and have a green card, and then they'll be able to hire me. So that's something that I know that you guys also help out people try to find out.
Definitely. I want to dive more into the proposed endeavor side, but before doing that, just to cement like the initial requirement, because I had a call yesterday with a wealth manager at Vietnam. A lot of his clients were thinking EB5 because it's taking 50 months for the petition. It's not as viable looking at the EB1C, but maybe the job numbers aren't that good on the Vietnamese side. His clients have the money, they're accomplished, but they don't have the bachelor degree, they don't have the advanced degree. So what I'm hearing today is not all's lost, but you have to document that you hit 3 out of those 6 and that you are in a professional organization, you have 10 years of experience. And it's going to be a little harder, I imagine, more work for you, but it's still possible if you don't have that advanced degree or bachelor's.
It's not all lost. And I don't want to, snooze our viewers, but I mean, basically when it comes to the EB2 NIW, everything is based on a precedent decision, which is called the matter of Dinosaur. And that's bringing up the point that you brought up just earlier about the proposed endeavor, right? So like one of the prongs is that it has to be of substantial merit and of national importance, which we've already discussed, right? You know, what is it that you're doing in your profession that it's going to enhance, this society, the American society, the United States, right? Maybe on the technological side, on the scientific side, on the agricultural side, on national defense side. So that's basically how we address that, right? We make sure that they understand that whatever profession the candidate has is a profession that is, very important for this country, and this country needs a lot more people like them. The second prong focuses on whether or not the person is well positioned to advance that proposed endeavor, right? And what we look at is that the education, the experience, what they've done before, how successful they've been. For example, if they're on the financial side, entrepreneurial side, right? How successful they've been, in generating revenue and all that. So that's the way that you sort of, prove that, right? And then the third one is it's on balance if it's beneficial to the United States to waive the requirement of the labor certification. I'm pretty sure that you know what that is. Just basically when a company wants to sponsor you, you can go through the process, but it's a lot longer. You definitely have to have a sponsor company from the United States. You got to deal with the Department of Labor. After the Department of Labor, if they approve it, then you move on to the immigration stage of it, right? So on balance, you have to prove that it's better, right, not to have you go through those extra steps and just simply allow you to come in and benefit this country, right? So I think that's something that's important that people understand about the proposed endeavor. And once again, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I can't tell you how much easier my life is when I have a good professional plans and business plans and contacts potential employers once a person has a green card in here to sort of convince immigration that we've sort of checked that checkbox. You know what I mean?
And I know it's a lot of matchmaking in terms of based on what they do and that they're really well positioned to, advance that endeavor in the United States. Mm-hmm. But what are some recent approvals that you've had where it was you kind of knew it was going to get approved or it had a very high likelihood of getting approved? Like what type of proposed endeavors? Was it more on the entrepreneur side? Was it more on someone seeking employment in the US? Could you share a couple of examples?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, this, like I said, we like to also utilize a lot of what government initiatives are out there, right? So I think I saw a video that you put out a couple of days ago.
Exactly, yeah. A week ago, we did the critical industries directly from Joe Biden's office.
So we try to pair those up, right? And try to make sure that, they understand that this is something that it's of importance to the United States.
Your boss's boss's boss says this.
It's saying that we need this, right? We need green energy. We can't just be dependent on other countries to, have, the agricultural side grow, right? So we have, for example, green energy, candidates, obviously for confidentiality. I can't tell you too much, but I can tell you about, what happened. People who have worked in sort of building highways and structures, in their particular countries, there are green, right? They're going to reduce emissions, or they're going to make it, easier for them to do their projects without, having a huge impact on the environment. As well, on the agricultural side, we had a really, really interesting case, and that's why I keep bringing the vertical farming stuff, because it was so interesting to me.
I've dived into it just a little bit, but it's wild. Yeah. The vertical.
It really is. It really is, because I mean, if you think about it, you need hundreds of acres, right, to grow whatever, potatoes or lettuce or whatever it is. But then you can do that at the same amount in a warehouse, and it's just
warehouse,
up, right?
And it's so dense. It can be so much more dense.
Put it on roofs, and the roofs of buildings. They're implementing that in a lot of major cities as well. So we see that a lot.
So let's unpeel the onion there. So imagine it's a civil engineer. Maybe they had one green project, but they're not an environmental engineer, and their proposed endeavor is going to be more on the green energy space. Is that okay, or do you want someone that's just been doing green engineering projects in Colombia or whatever country, and they're going to be doing the same thing in the US?
Right. Well, obviously having much more experience in that particular subject helps out, but it doesn't mean that you can completely take it out, right? What you try to argue, and this is where the professional plan comes in, right? And our legal arguments is that given, how qualified this person is, right? The history of this person, those talents, right, can be then translated into industries, very easily translated into industries that are of need, right? Like the green energy and vertical farming and stuff that we're talking about. So it's not all lost, right? It makes it a little bit more difficult, but that's why me and you are here, right? To try to make it easier.
Exactly. And yeah, there are some total layup cases where it's a PhD student already in the United States, already working on his thesis on this, and that's kind of the proposed endeavor. And there's, a whole scale in terms of how difficult it is. And to be frank, if it's too difficult, there's usually some better visa category for them. And we're
exactly. It's not all
we
lost.
Can help them with the opportunity, we will help, and Joaquin can help with whatever visa category that is.
It's not all lost. The good thing about these visas, Patrick, is that I always tell people, don't give up. You might not fit the profile right now, and mind you, we're a little bit more picky because we're not in the business of just selling stuff. You know what I mean? If I'm not getting approvals, I'm not gonna get a good reputation, right? You're not
gonna move countries right away or start practicing ditch immigration law.
Exactly. So it's, you can always work on your profile, and make it better, right? Or like you said, you utilize other visas, right? That you can use sort of for a stepping stone, and then once you're here, you start building up your repertoire, and then you get to the point where we're confident that we have a pretty good chance of getting your residency.
That's what we've seen with the E2. So
Yep.
they'll start, maybe they invest in a science and education for children or a home health care franchise,
Right.
and they're not quite there, or maybe their background's not as strong as a proposed endeavor. But
Right.
if you've already created the 40 healthcare jobs, it's probably going to be a little easier getting the EB2 NIW if you haven't done anything so far.
Absolutely. Keep on working. That's how I always tell them. You got to keep on working on your profile. And I mean, look, maybe this year now, but you keep on working on your profile, in a year and a half, you'll be set to go. So that's my advice to clients.
So Joaquin, let's go through some of the questions that we have. Samantha's asking, what are the cases that the government is most interested in applying for the EB2 NIW visa? I know we already went through this, but maybe there's some other ones that come to mind.
So a lot of people have this misconception that it has to be scientific or maybe only business related. But like I said, there's all sorts of things. I mean, I'm orthodontist. You know what I mean? There's people that have come up with procedures, right? Dental procedures that are innovative. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different professions, right, that you can prove that are of exceptional ability and that are in the national interest. I mean, in the healthcare industry, we know for a fact that there's a huge demand on that industry, right? And then anything that can sort of support that industry, can be made into a really good argument that's necessary, right? So
like, for example, like could a nurse that has like a master's in nursing from some country and say hey, I'm going to be a traveling nurse, I'm going to go to wherever the highest demand is for my services? Could that be?
Well, the nurse is a little bit more complex because they would have to get certified in here. But what we've seen is, for example, is a person that, it might be a nurse or something, but then they can have some sort of consulting, right?
Oh, yeah.
A consulting business that provides this specific sort of niche procedures, right? I go back to the dental industry, right? That would support orthodontists across the United States. So you can make really good arguments that they meet the requirements and they are in the national interest because there's not many of them here, right?
So it seems like it's
engineering,
like choose your niche and just go with it.
Yeah, we've had in the aviation industry, engineers, stuff that I never even thought in my life that existed. How the metals and the electrical wiring works and all that is in the national interest. You can make very good arguments in national interest, especially for national defense and for just the aviation industry. So there really is a plethora of different professions that would probably qualify if we had the right candidate, right?
We have a question from Ricardo. Based on your experience, what is the best advice to keep in mind for someone applying for a visa for the first time in the U.S.?
Well, having a good sort of vetted profile is really good. You want to be able to know what your chances are. I mean, look, these visas, especially EB1 and EB2, they're 100% discretionary, right? So you're at the mercy of a human being who might be in a good mood. Sometimes that human being might sort of not take it as good as we thought. I mean, I've had profiles where I feel like, hey, this is a slam dunk, and we get it an hour, right, or an hour fee or something like that. And then some profiles are very weak, and the client is just pushing, Joaquin, I want to apply anyway, and they do it. But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that you have to know what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, right? So if you have a very good, well-vetted profile, then you can get the advice to sort of work on your weaknesses, right? And highlight your strengths. So I think speaking to people like me or other attorneys or Patrick and Visa Franchise, right, where you can come up with a good professional plan or business plan is something that is extremely important to know what I need in order to at least have a chance, right, to get an approval.
And Joaquin, we have a question from Brazil, Sydney Sequeira. Great discussion up to now. And I was wondering if you guys have experience in approving EB2 NIWs for someone that is a corporate banker in Brazil and has been in the financial market for over 10 years.
Yeah, we certainly have that. The finance world, obviously, America is known for, dollars.
It's one of the critical industries, like blockchain technology, ledgers. So probably
and now we
has any technology experience within that corporate banking.
Exactly. So yes, we have had that, and finance, banking, and business consultant, business management, financial management, and then now, like you said, blockchain and all these new technologies that we see in being incorporated.
Payments,
like
I know, is a big
thing. Cash App, and all this sort of payment platforms are something that are very important now for this country. So yeah, we have, and once again, it really depends on having a good professional plan, a good profile, and then making sure that we can unite those to make the best argument possible, so you can get an approval.
And Maria Luisa has a question: with the EB2 NIW, can I apply for the green card later? What I think might be helpful, Joaquin, because the EB2 NIW is the green card. Maybe it'd be good to take a step back, and it's just like, what's the practice? And what's the process?
The process,
like, you apply with the I-140.
They're called visas. It's funny because a lot of people are like, okay, so I'm gonna get this visa and then I'm gonna get a work permit, right? I'm like, no, okay. I know it's very confusing. It's confusing. They're called visas. This one's in particular, but what you're getting is a residency, right? So you're getting a residency. So there's two ways to do it, really. A lot of the time, most of the times, right now, there's the visa bulletin is a little bit backed up, right? So inside it'll be difficult to do an adjustment of status, but in general, you could do that. But the way it works is essentially, you build the profile, you build the file, right? We prepare the file, we work with the client to identify the strengths and the weaknesses. After we build all that up, we submit what is called an I-140 petition. That's done here in the United States, right? Look, pre-pandemic, I could tell you within 6 to 8 months, you would get an answer. Post-pandemic, they're all over the place. I've seen answers in 4 months. I've seen answers in 18 months. It's crazy. But the good thing, as you know, is that now they've introduced premium processing for EB2.
What's it, 45 days? They have to
45
give you an
days. Yeah. 45 days. So you can get an answer in 45 days. Now, the second part of it is basically a step that everybody who wants to come to the United States, whether it be a tourist visa, investment visa, whatever, has to go through, which is the consular process. So that means that after you've gotten an approval, we get the I-140 approved. That goes to the National Visa Center. National Visa Center contacts the embassy where you live and lets them know, to create a case. And you have to go through a process in which everybody has to go through, where they have to see if you have any criminal background, if you've had any negative immigration history, and then also to see really if you're the person that you say you are. And sometimes, for the EB2, not so much, but sometimes they'll question a little bit about your successes, your achievements, and what you've done, right? Depending on the agent that you get. But I guess what I was getting at on the second part of it, because we're always getting those questions, like how long is it going to take? How long is it going to take? And we've gone through it. Let's say that a medium without premium processing is 8 months for the I-140.
The first step, I-140.
On the second step, we kind of have our hands tied. It really depends on the country. So if one embassy is moving a lot slower for a certain type of visa, it is what it is. There isn't much that we can do. Although these visas are important, so they prioritize usually family visas because they want families to be reunited. But then after that, they go right on to these visas, right? So depending on your embassy, it could take sometimes 2 months, 3 months. I've seen 6 months as well. So that depends on where you live, which embassy.
Do you sometimes like we've had approvals for the E2 visa? I forget the legal term, but it's like basically it's essential. Like they're either gonna have to fire employees or there's some mission critical aspect to it.
Yeah, you can make also an argument in the EB2 that look there's projects that this candidate has already been contacted for, and if we're going to be waiting so long, this projects might not be realized. So it's important. It's a necessity, business necessity, for you to sort of push their appointment a little bit quicker. So yeah, that certainly can be argued. Once again, it's at the discretion of the embassy, but it's something that you can argue for sure.
What would you say, like expectation, conservative estimate, 18 to 24 months from the time you start the process to get to be entering the U.S. with a green card?
No, I think that's a little too long. I think that
Okay.
at the worst case scenario for an EB2 NIW, you're looking at 14, 15 months. If you're not one of those extreme cases where the I-140 is taking 14 months for a response, right? I think a good average now embassies across the world could be maybe 5 months, right? But there's a lot of them who are basically 3 months only, 3-month wait. So if you do it the long way, might take 8 months. Then you add another 4, you're looking at a year, right? If you do it premium processing, we're looking at 45 days, and then you're looking at maybe 4 months or maybe 6 months.
And if someone's already on like an E2 visa, they could do premium processing within the United States and then just wait for the visa bulletin to become current and then adjust status from within.
Yeah, exactly. So long as your status is current, that's something that is extremely important. And then some other people might want to educate themselves a little bit more. So maybe they jump onto a student visa, and parallelly, you can have the other process going on, right? So yeah, so long as you maintain your status in here, that's possible. But obviously, as you know, the visa bulletin is a little backed up, so you have to make sure that you are in status in order to do so.
Joaquin, we got 2 more questions here. One from Juliana. Do I need to have a full business plan for my proposed endeavor plan?
It really depends on what your profile is and what it is that you're trying to convince the government that you can do over here. So a professional plan is more for people who they are really good in their own professions, right? And then you're trying to explain to the government, like, how is it that this person is going to help the United States, and it's of national importance, right? How their profession, is going to be of national importance to the United States. Business plan is more, and those typically are sort of like the people who will be finding jobs in here, right?
So it could be like we had someone reach out recently. They do cybersecurity, so they're probably going to work at a multinational. They set up their own consulting firm, but they're probably just going to get direct employment.
Exactly. So you have that. That's what we call more of like professional plan. You can have a consulting firm or something like that. And on the business plan side, it's more of like, okay, I have already an idea. I'm going to create this company based on my amazing trajectory and experience. This business is going to do A, B, C, and D. These are the projections for the next 5 years. How many people we're going to be employing? How are we going to grow? And that's where more of the business plan comes into play.
And Joaquin, final question from Ryan Wilk. As a practitioner, fellow immigration attorney, I presume, what style of arguments might you make regarding the final on the balance prong?
Well, I think that if you have made a really good argument, if we made a really good argument in the first 2 prongs, the third one is really sort of, easy. I hate saying easy in the immigration world, because nothing is easy in the immigration world, but it's a lot easier to make the argument that on balance, why would you want to have a person who has all these talents and can bring in so many different exceptional abilities to this country and make this country better, go through an extensive process, right? A much more extensive process, when you can just have him or her here already, quickly, helping out, this society and this country, right? So the third prong is not as important. I think the first 2 are the most important. When it comes to RFEs, they really attack the first 2. If you have any requests for evidence. So the unbalanced one it's a little bit easier once you have a strong 1 and 2.
And what we've seen, there's a lot of remote workers that are outside the United States working in tech. And if it's in the U.S. interest to get them here fast, because maybe they're getting paid like $50K abroad, but their salary will go up to 120K or even more.
Yeah.
And now they're paying payroll tax, where they might have been an independent contractor or just paying local taxes in whatever country they are. But if they're able to get here sooner, that's a lot of tax money that the U.S.
Oh yeah, of course. And I mean, typically,
tax money and consumption that the
no,
U.S.
yeah, and a lot of people are like, oh, I'm gonna have to, be paying taxes, obviously, in the United States. And I'm like, well, in comparison to your country, like, you're looking pretty good. So
and you get a nice return
tax
back.
code in here. Yeah, you're looking a lot better. So it's a good opportunity. They're great visas, and I mean, a lot of people just don't think they have it, or they just don't know that this is something that they can utilize. So I think that with a good team like Visa Franchise and a good immigration attorney, you could be in the right path to coming here to the United States with your family, your spouse, and children under 21.
Well, Joaquin, really appreciate you joining. Anyone that's interested in scheduling a consultation, Joaquin's been generous to offer exclusively to Visa Franchise clients a free initial consultation. See if you're a good fit for the EB2 NIW. See if you have a high likelihood based on your background, your proposed endeavor, to achieve the ultimate goal of a green card. So feel free to shoot us an email. We'll then help arrange a free consultation with Joaquin to see if you're eligible for the EB2 NIW.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick. And thank you so much, everybody listening to us. We hope to hear from you guys soon, okay?
Thanks again, Joaquin, for joining. Really appreciate it.
Take care. All right. Bye-bye.